Good day to you. Let's talk a little bit about what's happening if you're stuck in the northern hemisphere. Obviously, I don't have to worry about wintertime anymore. I have to worry about rainy season, hot season. That being said, I used to get really terrible seasonal affective disorder when I lived in Kentucky. It's one of the reasons I decided to move south. But a disclaimer for you, if you think that all your problems are going to go away just by moving to the equator or, moving to a sunnier location, you might feel better. The sun's going to be good for you. But if you're walking away from somewhere like I was, like Kentucky, where I lived for over 20 years and I had tons of connections, business wise, social connections, and you're moving somewhere by yourself or with very limited family and starting all over again, social connection has a massive, massive, massive effect on your health and well-being. So before you burn the whole house down and move, you might want to consider maybe going away for a few weeks or something like that before you completely burn everything down and move. I'd say it's taken me about 2 years to get where I've got some decent social network. Coaching in person has helped a lot. I was miserable there for a while. And a lot of people that move down here, they end up drinking because the alcohol is so cheap and they get themselves in big trouble. But I'm doing better now. But I would just say it's not all the online, working online is not what it's made out to be. It's a lot more challenging than you would think. And then, social interaction is super important for overall health and well-being. I think it's the most overlooked thing next to ignoring circadian rhythm. So what I used to do, I'm not a medical doctor. I'm not giving you advice. I'm just talking about what I used to do. What I used to do is one, I would make sure that I would have a great tan going into the winter. I'd make sure my vitamin D levels were as high as possible from the sun. That way I could live off my reserves during the winter time because we are designed to have peaks and flows and season and things like that. I would still get my morning light no matter how cold it was. On days that the sun would come out, I'd get my shirt off, I'd get outside, I'd work out. That's a rarity in Kentucky. Usually Kentucky, it's like a gray armpit from like now until like April, where it's just rainy and dark and it doesn't get cold enough for it to freeze, but it's not very warm and it's cloudy and rainy and yucky and the sun might come out for a couple weeks, and that's what drove me insane. So I want a high vitamin D level. I would increase my level of fatty fish and I would still get sun when I could. The sun is still important even when there's no UV there. I would use red light in my gym. I would also use a tanning bed a couple times a week. And I know my dermatologist would get so mad at me. You're going to get cancer, da, 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 da. I was like, I'd do a 5-minute, 3 time a week tanning bed, full body in the afternoon. It would make me feel so much better. I would literally have tons of energy. That bright light would just make me feel amazing. And I told my dermatologist, I'm like, look, it's either like I go a couple times a week and I feel great, or I get depressed and I struggle. And there's probably not going to be a good outcome if that continues to spiral out of control, because I just am miserable when it's dark. When I was in Canada, it was fine because it was bright and sunny. Colorado was fine, bright and sunny all the time. The sun didn't come up as much, but it was bright and sunny and I didn't get really bad depression. So what I would tell people is you can use this 30 vitamin D lamp as well. That's a UV lamp. Use it in the afternoon. You can use a brooder light. A sauna is great for the winter time to give you some heat. Cultures have been using sauna for centuries to overcome tough winters. A brooder light from Tractor Supply is a really nice, economical way to do things. A reptile light you can get, on Amazon or a pet food store. You only use that for like 10 or 15 minutes because it does have UV in it. You can use that in combination with the brooder light. You can actually make a sauna from a brooder light. Sauna Space is another great portable sauna because you can even get the lamps from them and just make your own sauna in a closet. A lot of people will do that. More Tech, which I've used forever. I have their little Inferno. It's great. They've come out with a new one called Krypton, I believe, where it has near infrared, near far infrared, and UV all in the same panel that you can set on timers. So that way you don't have to get, several different bulbs, several different lights. It's all there in one spot. No flicker. It also doesn't put off any EMF. So I've been using their lights forever. I think that's a great investment if you have the extra money. If not, you could go with a brooder light and a reptile light to get a little bit of vitamin D and get some red light. I think having the UV and the red light at the same time is great because that's what happens in nature. UV is never isolated in nature. So it's definitely good to have the combo, and you definitely don't want to be doing like your UV bright light exposure at like 6 o'clock at night or like 6 o'clock in the morning. It needs to be midday so it doesn't mess your circadian rhythm all up to pieces. So those are all options. And then making sure you're getting social connection, you're getting outside. Even in the winter, you need to get outside. That's why I hated Kentucky because, other than going mudding, which is fun once or twice, so you can't go snowshoeing, you can't go snowmobiling, you can't go cross country skiing, you can't go downhill skiing, you can't. There's just very limited activities you can do in the winter as opposed to like Canada or Colorado where it gets cold enough for the snow to stick. And there's so many fun things you can do, ice fishing, you can do all sorts of stuff. And so it's a lot better in the long run. Even though you don't get a lot of UV, it's still bright and sunny. You still feel good. So that's just a few tips to survive the winter if you're in the Northern Hemisphere. And then a little warning about, hey, if you're going to make this big move, make sure you take the social component of it. Most people totally underestimate that. And what happens is when you do move somewhere and you don't know a lot of people, you tend to get sucked into the phone more. And then you end up scrolling and you end up basically addicted to the phone, which is not a good thing either. And then with AI, you end up like interacting with this AI, and that becomes your personal interaction. And then that's not even close to the interaction benefits of interacting with real people in person and looking them in the eye and all that good stuff. Have yourself a great day. All those products I mentioned can be found on the Vitality Brotherhood recommended products page, and appreciate your support. Have yourself a great day. Let me know if you have any